Greenpeace, which is an environmental organization, but we work on energy issues in South Africa mainly. And I'm very grateful to have a little bit of time just to give you a little bit of information about coal and water in South Africa. So thank you very much for making the space on the program for this. It won't be very long, but the idea is that we start sharing information a little bit so that you get a sense of the issues, and then maybe we can see where we go from there. But a few weeks ago I actually went to the Energy Caucus in Cape Town, which is a similar kind of thing to the Water Caucus. And although it's much looser than the Water Caucus, I think, because we don't have coordinators, we don't have a steering committee. And at the Energy Caucus we were looking at all the different kinds of energy. So we were looking at fracking, we were looking at nuclear, we were looking at coal, and renewable energy. And the one thing that came up, the one issue that came up at that caucus was the issue of water. And so increasingly, as people who campaign on energy issues, we are recognizing that water is an important issue. So that's part of the reason why I'm here today. There are few issues that are as deeply connected as water and energy. Without water, we cannot have energy production. But without energy, we cannot get water services to people's homes. But at the moment, we are using coal to create our electricity in South Africa. What that means is that we're actually burning coal to produce steam to turn the turbines in the coal-fired power stations to create electricity. The problem with this is that we're essentially burning our waters to produce electricity at the moment. So, and I'm sitting in a room where there's a lot of knowledge about water, so if I say anything that's incorrect, please do tell me. But we're living in a country where the Department of Water Affairs is predicting huge water scarcity in the future. They're saying that our supply of water is not going to meet the demand. And that means that the availability of water, so do we have enough water, but also the allocation of water, so where are we choosing to give the water to, are two very important issues. And what that means is that the decision to invest in new coal-fired power stations, instead of relatively water-free technologies like wind and solar PV, has big implications for South Africa's water. So Eskom is a strategic water user in South Africa. That means that Eskom, according to the National Water Act, will get water no matter what happens in this country. So if there's a drought, potentially Eskom will get water at the expense of communities or cities, or we don't know what it actually means. But that means that the choices that Eskom makes as our national utility is really important. We also know that climate change is likely to reduce the water that's available in southern Africa. But the reality is that burning coal is one of the biggest drivers of climate change. So we all know that because the climate is changing, we're going to be facing more extreme weather, like droughts and floods, but it means that overall the water that's available in different areas around the world is going to change. And so to stop climate change, we also need to be looking at why are we burning coal to produce electricity, because the pollutants that it's creating are driving climate change. So the reason that I'm here is because I think that it's very important that we start to make the connection between particularly coal and water. Because decisions made on energy affect our water resources, and decisions made about water affect our energy. So I don't know if everybody knows this, but almost 93% of South Africa's electricity comes from coal. So that means that as a country, every time we turn on a light switch, we're burning coal somewhere in this country. And to burn coal, we have to be mining coal somewhere in this country. So that burning of coal creates huge amounts of pollution. But at the same time, this investment in coal-fired power stations has failed to supply electricity to an estimated 12 million South Africans. So we're building new coal-fired power stations, we're polluting the air, we're using water, but we're also not actually delivering electricity to the people in South Africa who actually need the electricity the most. But at the same time, Eskom is currently building two of the biggest coal-fired power stations in the world. So we all know that we had rolling blackouts in 2008 and not enough electricity to meet demand. And so as a response to that, Eskom is building two big coal-fired power stations. They're building Medupi, which is in the Waterberg area, which is a water-scarce area, and they're building Kusile, which is in Mpumalanga, in the coalfield area. And we're not just investing in coal, we're building the third and the fourth biggest coal-fired power stations in the world. So that's even USA, China, India. We're not just investing in coal, we're investing big in coal in South Africa. And that's in addition to the 13 coal-fired power stations that we have in South Africa. But the new news is that 2 or 3 weeks ago, Cabinet had a Lekotla, and at that Lekotla they decided that a third mega coal-fired power station is going to be built. So, and that one is going to be built in the Waterberg area, which is the same area where Medupi is, which is an area where there's been some coal mining, but the National Development Plan identifies the Waterberg as a major source of coal going forward. So they're planning new coal-fired power stations, they're planning infrastructure, they're planning coal mining for that area. So to give you an idea of the size of these coal-fired power stations, so it's three. It's Medupi, it's Kusile, and then it'll be the third one. And they're all more or less the same size. So to give you an idea, Kusile is going to use 17 million tons of coal a year to produce electricity. And of course, to burn that amount of coal, you need to be having more coal mines. So the area around Kusile is going to become a coal mining area, even extending it to what it was before. So the thing that's important to know is that every step in the process of using coal to produce electricity both pollutes and consumes huge amounts of water. So right from the very beginning, when you're getting coal, when you're mining coal, water is used during the coal mining process. It's used for dust control, but it's also used to wash the coal. I don't know if everybody knows, but we take the coal out of the ground, but it's too dirty for coal-fired power stations to burn it. And so what we actually do is we wash the coal so that we can take away some of the impurities. So you have the coal sort of coming to the front, the top, and then the water has all the impurities, and then they take that coal and that goes to the coal-fired power stations to be burnt. But of course that's wastewater, which is polluted, and what do mines do with that water is a big question. And then water is also used in the coal-fired power stations to produce electricity. Basically the way that coal-fired power stations work is that we burn the coal to make energy, we use the water which produces steam. So the water, because of the heat from the coal, becomes steam and turns turbines in the coal-fired power stations. And it's through the turning of the turbines that we generate electricity. But huge amounts of water are used for that. At the moment, even without the new coal-fired power stations, Eskom uses 10,000 litres of water per second. In 7 seconds, Eskom uses the same amount of water as a household would use in an entire year if they had access to 25 litres of water per day. So it really is a big issue. And then we also have the issue of acid mine drainage, which is a huge problem, and there isn't really a solution. So the reason that I'm here and my job is that Greenpeace, along with a lot of other organizations, are campaigning for South Africa to shift away from coal and nuclear energy and towards renewable energy. And despite the potential benefits from renewable energy, Eskom continues to invest in coal, even when burning coal to produce electricity is one of the most destructive practices on the planet, using water, polluting our air, and not actually supplying people with electricity. So that's just a very brief introduction to the issue of coal and water. And Greenpeace, because we're increasingly recognizing that water and coal are linked, we did some research last year and released a report called Water Hungry Coal. And this report basically goes into what is Eskom doing, what is the history in South Africa, but also what does it mean? What does it mean to us going forward if the government and Eskom continue to see coal as the only source of electricity? That has huge implications for our water, and it means that we really should, because you can use wind without water, because you can use solar PV without water, we really need to be looking at how do we shift away from coal. And Greenpeace is saying that we do need to transition. So we do need to, it's not like turning off the coal-fired power stations tomorrow, but it's not a sustainable future for this country or for the people who live in the areas that are affected by coal. I think coal mining is something that people see and they live next to, and it affects them very deeply. But this issue of the coal-fired power stations is something that we don't even necessarily see, but it's taking all of our water, and it's also polluting our air very badly. So if anybody wants any more information afterwards, I'm very happy to talk. But thank you very much for giving me the space to talk to you. And I think that the more we can connect the issues of energy and water, even as Mary was saying, talking about fracking, these issues are connected, and we need to make the connections and really see how we campaign on them going forward.